Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopal Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopal Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Vedana Danjana Yasoda Nandana Vedana Danjana Jamuna Tera Vanachari Yamuna Tera Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vasmarapam Sabha Chikadashi Shishmo Andasam Shubhavada Ki Jai ISKCON Govinda Ki Jai Guntaraj Caitanya Caritamrita Ki Jai Govardhana. Oh glorious some devotees, oh glorious some devotees, oh glorious some devotees, oh glorious to Shigo and Shigaranga. So, reading from Sri Caitanya Caritamrita Madhya chapter 1, text 120. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Guru Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Guru Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Guru Bhaktavinda Rama Samhita Kanamrita Duri Puntapana Duri Pustakalana Haila Uttama Janina Rama Samhita Kanamrita Duri Puntapana Duri Pustakalana Haila Uttama Janina Brahma Samhita Kanamrita Duri Puntapana Duri Pustakalana Haila Uttama Janina Brahma Samhita Kanamrita Duri Puntapana Duri Pustakalana Haila Uttama Janina Brahma Samhita Kanamrita Duri Puntapana Duri Pustakalana Haila Uttama Janina Brahma Samhita Kanamrita Duri Puntapana Duri Pustakalana Haila Uttama Janina. Any ladies? Brahma Samhita Kanamrita Duri Puntapana Duri Pustaka Jaya Ranya Chanina. So translation purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu also found two other books, namely the Brahma Samhita and Krishna Karnamrita. Knowing these books to be excellent, he took them to present to his devotees. Purport: in the olden days there were no presses, and all the important scriptures were handwritten and kept in large temples. Caitanya Mahaprabhu found the Brahma Samhita and Krishna Karnamrita in handwritten texts, and knowing them to be very authoritative, he took them with him to present to his devotees. Of course, he obtained the permission of the temple commander. Now, both the Brahma Samhita and Krishna Karnamrita are available in print. with commentaries by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So the Brahma Samhita, of course, was original Brahma Samhita apparently had 100 chapters. So it's interesting that we've only got one of those chapters, chapter 5, verse 1, and verses 29 to 56. So I don't know if anybody ever wondered, is that what Lord Caitanya actually found? Just that small version? Or how we've only got a few verses from one chapter? The whole chapter. So verse 1 and then 29 to 56 is the whole chapter. Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, okay, perhaps. So it's interesting that there's actually, I've got here two versions of how Lord Caitanya came about this Brahma Samhita. I mean, Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they all more or less give the same understanding. Lord Caitanya found the Brahma Samhita in the Adikeshava temple, and with the permission of the temple commanders, I think it was one of the previous acharyas mentioned he had one Brahmin there rewrite like a new version. Anyway, I'll just, as it's mentioned, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he has given us a commentary of the Brahma Samhita, and I'm just going to read a little bit of the introduction. Of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master. So in his introduction, he says, the origins of the text known as Brahma Samhita are lost in cosmic antiquity. According to the Vedic version, Vedic tradition, these hymns of Brahma were recited and sung countless millennia ago by the last created being in the first created being in the universe, just prior to his act of creation. The text surfaced and entered calculable history early in the 16th century when it was discovered by Lord Caitanya, exploring the manuscript library of an ancient temple in Kerala, South India. Of course, that was the Adikeshava temple. Sri Caitanya's principal biographer, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, writes in Caitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 9, that after discussing esoteric spiritual matters among some highly advanced devotees present, Sri Caitanya found one chapter of the Brahma Samhita. Sri Caitanya felt great ecstasy and fell into intense mystic rapture that overflowed onto the physical realm, intuiting the Brahma Samhita to be the most valuable jewel. He employed a scribe in hand copying the manuscript and departing with the copy for his return journey to the north. So Srila Prabhupada just mentions, with the permission of the temple commander, he took the copy of those two books, Brahma Samhita, Krishna Caritamrita. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has mentioned that he had somebody scribe a copy of it. So either way, Lord Caitanya took a copy of the Brahma Samhita. It's interesting, in ISKCON Desire Tree, there was one devotee, Janava Nitai Das. He's presented a slightly different version. Where his information comes from, it wasn't clear, but he says that while Lord Caitanya was visiting the Adikeshava temple in Kerala, after chanting and dancing before the Lord, he was then invited to visit the house of a Brahmana devotee. When Sri Caitanya took his seat in the house of the devotee, he became feeling great ecstatic symptoms. At that point, he asked the devotee to dig up underneath his seat where Lord Caitanya was sitting, and within the mud underneath the seat, an ancient manuscript of the Brahma Samhita was found, which had been almost completely eaten by white ants. All that was left was a single incomplete chapter of the original 100 chapters. So whether that's a bona fide version or not, I don't know. I guess, the previous acharyas don't give that version, but it's just interesting that there is another, like an ISKCON devotee has published on ISKCON's desire tree. Anyway, I'll leave it up to your individual intelligence to understand either way. Anyway, the main thing is that Lord Caitanya, one way or another, found a copy of Brahma Samhita, and so now within ISKCON we do have it published. Of course, those who have read Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's commentary of the Brahma Samhita, very, very high English. Basically, you need to use a dictionary to understand his purports properly. But nevertheless, we do have that copy here available. So the other book that Lord Caitanya found was the Caritamrita. So who knows who wrote the Caritamrita? Bilvamangal Thakur, very good. Gold star to you. Bilvamangal Thakur is the author of this book, a poem with 112 texts. So Bilvamangal Thakur, also known as Lila Shuka, he appeared in the 9th century in South India, took initiation in the Vishnu Swami sect from his Guru Maharaj Somagiri, and who gave him the initial name Lila Shuka. So a contemporary of Lord Caitanya, Sri Caitanya Das Goswami, wrote a commentary of the Caritamrita. So Caitanya Das Goswami, he's counted amongst one of the primary associates of Lord Caitanya. And in the 10th canto of the Caitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila 1062, we find the verse, Caitanya Das Ram Das Arakanapura Tina Putra Shivandera Pabhua Bhaktasura. Caitanya Das, Ram Das, and Kanapur. These were the 3 sons of Shivananda and the Lord's heroic devotees. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because that was originally written in Sanskrit, that commentary. Bhaktivinoda Thakur later he translated into Bengali, and he writes in the preface, it was first published in the Sajjanitoshini, volume 10, issue number 1 in 1898. So in this preface, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains the importance that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu gave to the Caritamrita, and how Bilvamangal Thakur's life actually reflects the lives of the jivas in this world. So he explains that first, Bilvamangal Thakur, he was a materialist, then a Brahmagani, and finally he became a devotee of Krishna. Those who know the life of Bilvamangal Thakur, he was maintaining one prostitute, Chintamani, and during a big storm, he was feeling his senses were overwhelmed, and he wanted to go and visit Chintamani, and a great endeavour with the storm, crossing a swollen river, etc., etc. And when he finally knocking on the door of Chintamani, she was amazed that he would come to her in such a storm. And she mentioned, if you had such determined to approach Sri Krishna, you'd be a pure devotee. So Bilvamangal Thakur actually accepts this Chintamani as one of his gurus, one of his Shiksha gurus, because she was the one who pointed him in the right direction. So therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says he was a materialist, then become a Brahmagani, and finally become a devotee of Krishna. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions if we deliberate on this story, we can understand that this is the course of many jivas in this world. The jivas of this world are under three categories: prakrita, or materialistic, adhyatmika, or impersonal, seeking personal liberation, or aprikita, seeking transcendence. Just according to their karmic situation, their particular qualification. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues that there are many descriptions of the glories of Krishna Karnamrita written in the chapters of Caitanya Caritamrita, particularly Madhya Lila 9.306 to 308, which is hearing Krishna Karnamrita, Lord Caitanya became blissful, and with eagerness he had the manuscript copied. There is nothing equal to the Karnamrita in the three worlds, for within it there is knowledge concerning pure prema for Krishna. One who continuously reads the Karnamrita knows the beauty and the sweetness of Krishna Lila. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues in the preface, now the teachings of Sri Mahaprabhu are clearly written in two texts. Teachings on Tattva are in Sri Brahma Samhita, and teachings on Bhajan are in Krishna Karnamrita. Therefore, one who is a follower of Caitanya's teachings should recite Krishna Karnamrita with special care every day. So it's interesting, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says that Lord Caitanya had a copy written. He didn't just take the Brahma Samhita and Krishna Karnamrita from the library, but he had manuscript copied. So Krishna Karnamrita is available online if anybody's interested. You get the whole 112 chapters in a PDF. So anybody got any time, they could read through it. I'll just read the very first verse of it. He says in verse 1, all glories to Chintamani, my initiating spiritual master. All glories to Chintamani and my initiating spiritual master Somagiri. All glories to my instructing spiritual master, the Supreme Personality Godhead, who wears a peacock feather in his crown, under the shade of his lotus feet, which are like desire trees. Jai Shri Radharani enjoys the transcendental mellow of an eternal consort. So Lord Caitanya used to relish these verses in the Krishna Karnamrita. So what I'd like to do now is, 2 weeks ago we had our last Caitanya Caritamrita class. Aniruddha from Melbourne was reading. He actually read a few verses further on than he was allotted. Which I was meant to cover. But one thing he didn't mention it was verse 117. It's at Rameshwara, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu had a chance to read the Korma Purana, in which he discovered that the form of Sita kidnapped by Ravan was not that of the real Sita, but a mere shadow representation. In the purport, Prabhupada says the Korma Purana states that this shadowy Sita was placed into a fire as a test of chastity. It was Maya Sita who entered the fire and the real Sita who came out of the fire. So Prabhupada doesn't give much more information on that, who this Maya Sita is, what the history is. But I've done some research. The Padma Purana, and also about 15 years ago, Radhanath Swami recited this whole story. It was on a South Indian yatra, which I've got a copy of that recording. So it's a very interesting story, basically explaining who that Maya Sita was. So because Aniruddha didn't cover it, I thought I would sort of include in this class. It basically starts in the Treta Yuga, it goes right through to the current Kali Yuga. So with your permission, I might just recite this story. So in Treta Yuga, there was a king called Ratat Dwaj. who was extremely wealthy. However, he was killed in battle and all his wealth was plundered. His two sons, Damadwaj and Kushadwaj, became depressed and began to meditate upon goddess Lakshmi. Pleased by their devotion, Lakshmi appeared before them and asked them for any boon. The two sons asked Lakshmi to take birth individually to each of them, so with the desire that they may be able to get their father's wealth back, or the wealth that was lost by his father. So thus to Damadwaj, Lakshmi was born as his daughter Tulsi Devi, and to Kushadwaj, she was born as his daughter Vedavati. Princess Vedavati, however, had a wish not to marry anybody who was subject to birth or death. So you can imagine trying to find a husband who's not subject to birth or death. So feeling very frustrated, her father Kushadwaj arranged a Swayamvara for Vedavati, hoping that she would select her own husband. So a Swayamvara, of course, is where all the eligible kings and princes are called, and the girl is able to choose any one of those. Sometimes there's a test given, and sometimes, the rival parties are fighting each other, but in the end, the choice is up to the girl who she selects. However, she rejected them all and revealed then that she only wanted to marry Vishnu. So that's a pretty lofty desire, isn't it? Of course, she was the goddess of fortune, so who else would she marry? So her father said that was impossible. He didn't really know her actual identity. But he said it was impossible. Vedavati was firm in her decision, and she left the kingdom and just went to the forest and was just there wrapped in meditation with the desire to marry Vishnu. While she was in the forest, Ravana happened to see her there, and being attracted by her beauty, he approached her to marry her, but she rejected him and said, I am only going to marry Vishnu. And of course, Ravana didn't like to hear that because Vishnu was his sworn enemy. So he decided just to forcibly kidnap her. But at that time, Vedavati, Ravana grabbed hold of her hair to drag her away. At that time, she cut that portion of hair off that was touched by Ravana, and she then cursed him, saying that she will become the cause of his death. And then at that point, Vedavati was going to enter into the sacrificial fire to give up her body. But right at that time, Agni Dev, the fire god, happened to appear and saved her from the fire, and he took her into the care of his wife, Swaha Devi. So later, when Ravana, urged by his sister Suparnaka, abducted Ram's wife Sita in the Panchavati forest, whilst Ram and Lakshman were distracted by the golden deer, Agni protected Sita and had Vedavati as the Maya Sita abducted instead. It was actually Vedavati who spent the many months in the Ashok forest on the island of Lanka. So after the battle of Lanka and Ravana was killed, Sri Ram went to rescue his wife Sita. But due to some apparent doubt about Sita's chastity, Ram asked Lakshman to build a sacrificial fire to test Sita's purity. Of course, obviously Ram knew that, she was extremely chaste, but just for the benefit of everybody else, he just wanted to test her purity, because obviously she was living in the house of another man for about 9 or 10 months. So in the doubts of some people, maybe, there was some issue there. So just to test her chastity for the benefit of others, had Lakshman build a sacrificial fire, and the idea was Sita would enter the fire. If she was untouched by the fire, it would indicate that she's completely pure. So when Sita entered the fire, Agni appeared with the real Sita, because as we know previously, Vedavati was in the place of Sita. When Ram then questioned her as to who the other lady by her side was, Sita informed Ram that the lady was Vedavati, who endured Ravana's torture for 10 months in Lanka for her sake. Sita requests Ram to accept Vedavati as his wife, but Ram refused because he said he's taken the vow Ekapatni Vrat, that he would only accept one wife. However, he promised to wed Vedavati in her next birth as Padmavati, who would be born of the daughter of Kashraj, when Ram himself would take the form of Lord Venkateshwara. He would also be known as Srinivasan Balaji, different names, but we generally know like the deity of Lord Venkateshwara in South India, Tirupati temple. So Lord Ram, he made that promise that I won't accept her as my wife because I've taken the vow, but in a future incarnation, I will accept her as my wife. So later, this king Kashraj, with great surprise, he found this baby underground in a lotus flower and accepted her as his daughter of the name Padmavati. So again, it was Bhudevi, one of Vishnu's consorts, who was born as Padmavati. So she was, as we understand, the reincarnation of Vedavati. I guess reincarnation is not really the right word because reincarnate means into the flesh again. And this is the goddess of fortune. So goddess of fortune, expansion of Mahalakshmi, who is an expansion of Radharani. So whether technically she's Radha Tattva or Lakshmi Tattva, but anyway, she's not an ordinary jiva. But nevertheless, the word reincarnation was the word that was given. So Vedavati was born as Padmavati, as the daughter of King Akash. And this was indeed the prophecy that Ram had given Vedavati previously. So we know the story when the sages wanted Bhrigu to find who was supreme. Bhrigu tested Brahma and Shiva to find they both struggled with anger. He then went to Lord Vishnu and saw Vishnu lying on his bed. Lakshmi Devi was massaging his feet, and Bhrigu, he went straight to Vishnu and kicked him in the chest. And of course Vishnu, he wasn't affected at all. He was more concerned whether Bhrigu might have hurt his foot. But Lakshmi, she was outraged. How could this Brahmana come and kick my lord in the chest? So there's actually one reason at that point Lakshmi cursed all Brahmanas that they would be poverty stricken. So any Brahmanas who are struggling with money, you can blame Lakshmi for it. So Lakshmi, she was angered, and at that point she abandoned Vishnu and to reside in Kolhapur on this earth planet, performing penance. And so later the Kolhapur Mahalakshmi temple in Maharashtra, it was later constructed there in honour of Mahalakshmi. So after the departure of Mahalakshmi to Kolhapur, Lord Vishnu, feeling great separation from Lakshmi and also out of love for his devotees, he left Vaikuntha and disguised as a boy, he took residence in an anthill underneath a tamarind tree beside a lake on the Venkat hill in South India, chanting Lakshmi's name and meditating for her return. Why he chose to live in an anthill, I've got no idea, but that was part of the Leela. Wanting to serve Vishnu, Brahma and Shiva decided to take the role of a cow and calf to serve him. Surya, the sun god, informed Mahalakshmi of this and requested her to assume the form of a cowherd girl and sell the cow and calf to the king of the Chola country, who happened to be a Kashraj. The king brought the cow and its calf and sent them to graze on the Venkat hill along with his herd of cattle. However, discovering Lord Vishnu on the anthill, the cow, who we know was Brahma, provided its milk and thus fed the Lord. Meanwhile, at the palace, the cow was not yielding any milk because obviously he was giving all the milk to Vishnu in the anthill. So the Chola king, Akashraj's wife, chastised the cowherd severely. So to find out the cause of the lack of milk, the cowherd followed the cow and hid behind a bush and discovered that the cow was emptying all her milk into the anthill. So angry with the conduct of the cowherd aimed a blow with his axe at the head of the cow. However, Lord Vishnu rose from the anthill and received the blow on his own head to save the cow. When the cowherd saw the Lord bleed at the blow of his axe, he fell down and died of shock, as you would if you've just hit an axe on Lord Vishnu. The cow returned to the king, bellowing with fright, with blood stains over her body. And to find out the cause of the cow's terror, this king, Kashraj, followed her to the scene of the incident. And the king found the cowherd lying dead on the ground near the anthill. While he stood wondering how it had happened, Lord Vishnu again, he rose from the anthill and cursed the king that he would become an asura because of his actions of his servant. He would, hit him with the axe. However, because the king, Kashraj, pleaded innocence, begged for mercy, the Lord blessed him by saying that the curse would end only when the Lord would be adorned with the crown presented by the king at the time of his marriage with his daughter Padmavati. You see, everything started to come in line here, according to the prophecies. After some time, Padmavati grew into a beautiful lady. Once she was plucking flowers in a garden with some of her friends, and a wild elephant came there. She and her friends become very scared, but at that time, Lord Venkateshwara, or Srinivas, who was chasing the elephant, appeared there. At that point, the elephant turned around and disappeared back into the woods. But Lord Venkateshwara, Srinivas, was stunned by the beauty of Padmavati and immediately desired to marry her. So this is Vishnu and Lakshmi coming together. Obviously, there's a natural attraction. Padmavati also fell in love with him. So Srinivas, he returned to his hermitage but could not forget Padmavati. He forgot everything and lost in Padmavati's thoughts all the time. So however, his mother, or foster mother, Vakula Devi, found him there lying on his bed, not interested in anything. After an incessant inquiring by her, he told her about Padmavati. Actually, Vakula Devi was the foster mother of Venkateshwara. In Krishna Leela, Jasoda Mata, the foster mother of Krishna, complained to him that she was unable to witness his wedding with Rukmini. To this, Krishna replied that he would ensure that she would get an opportunity to see his marriage to a form of Lakshmi in the Kali Yuga. So in the Kali Yuga, Vishnu had taken the form of Venkateshwara, Srinivas, and Jasoda was reborn as Vakula Devi, the foster mother of Venkateshwara. As promised, she was later able to arrange her foster son's wedding with Padmavati, the foster daughter of the Kashraj and Dharani Rani. So you see that You know, Krishna, Vishnu, they make promises and they always fulfill the promises. They're always pleasing the devotees in different ways. So the Lord said to his foster mother, Vakula Devi, that unless he married Princess Padmavati, he would have no peace. The Lord then narrated the story of Padmavati's previous birth and his promise to wed her. After listening to Srinivasa's story of how he had promised to marry Vedavati in the next birth as Padmavati, she offered to go to Kashraj and his queen and petition them for the marriage. Vakula Devi set off to meet the king, but on her way she met Padmavati's friends, who told her that Padmavati was also in love with Srinivas, and her condition was similar to his, just constantly pining to see Venkateshwara again. Vakula Devi went along with the maidservants to the queen. Meanwhile, Akashraj and his queen, Dharana Devi, were anxious about the health of their daughter. Padmavati, she wasn't eating, she wasn't sleeping, just pining away in thoughts of Venkateshwara. They learnt that Padmavati's love for Venkateshwara Srinivas of Venkat Hill. Akashraj consulted Brihaspati about the marriage and was informed that the marriage would be the best interests of both parties. Lord Srinivas, along with Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, started the journey to the residence of Akashraj with full honours and taken in possession on a mounted elephant to the palace for the marriage. But at that point, Venkateshwara, he said, actually, you know, I'm just living in an anthill. I've got nothing. I've got no wealth. I've got no assets. How can I pay for a wedding? So at that point, Kavera, the treasurer of the Devas, he appeared there and said, no problem, I will pay for the wedding. And Srinivas, he said, okay, but I'll accept it only as a loan, and for the rest of the yuga, my bhaktas will pay off that loan for me. So that was the agreement. So in the presence of all the Devas, Lord Srinivas wed Princess Padmavati, thus blessing Akashraj and freeing him from that curse. You remember the curse? He was cursed unless I get the blessings, offerings from you, Akashraj, you'll be cursed to become a Sura. So at that point he was free from the curse. So later, after the celestial marriage, Narada Muni informed Mahalakshmi, who was still meditating in Kolhapur, about the marriage. And a furious Lakshmi went there. So what's that saying? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. So how dare he marry somebody else? That was how she was thinking. So a furious Lakshmi reached the Tirumala hills where Srinivas was living with Padmavati, and there was a big fight between Lakshmi and Padmavati. But eventually Srinivas, he was able to calm the two angered goddesses and explain to Lakshmi the reason behind Padmavati's birth and her past as Vedavati, and his promise to Vedavati that he would marry her later. So feeling remorseful, Lakshmi embraced Padmavati and begged for her forgiveness. So however, as Kali Yuga progressed, Lord Srinivas Venkateshwara accepted a deity form. He was installed in the Tirupati temple, South India. So this deity form of Venkateshwara has two goddesses of fortune. If you see Venkateshwara on two sides, there's one Lakshmi on each side. So Sri Devi on one side and Mahalakshmi on the other side. Sri Devi or Mahalakshmi on one side and Bhudevi or Padmavati on the other side. And so interesting that today we see the Tirupati temple is probably the wealthiest temple in the world. And everyday devotees are bringing immense wealth to offer in charity. So in this way, his bhaktas are paying off the wedding loan. So that was a story from Treta Yuga right through to Kali Yuga, and basically the whole story of that Maya Sita, that illusory Sita. But as I said, the whole moral of the story is that Lord Vishnu always protects his devotees. When he gives a promise, he always honours it. And actually Venkateshwara means the God who keeps troubles away. So I thought it was quite an interesting story. So we'll end there. If there's any questions or comments. Yes.
Thank you for the class. What is the difference between Narayan and Vishnu?
Basically the same personality. I mean, different expansions of Vishnu, more or less. I mean, Vishnu can expand so many different, and according to the different pastimes and activities, he can be known as different names. That's the simple answer. Anything else? Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada. Ki jai.
Yeah.